Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So December was one roller coaster ride of a month. I mean, it started with one of Trump's former DOJ officials, Jeffrey Clark, announcing that he was going to have to invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination for the democracy-busting scheme he was in with Donald Trump. And the month ended with Congress on the cusp of subpoenaing its own members to try to get to the bottom of their knowledge of and possible involvement in the insurrection. So yeah, December was some month on the justice front. Here's a short recap of the legal stories for the month that was December 2021. So we just learned that Jeffrey Clark, a former high-up Department of Justice official, is preparing to plead the Fifth. Friends, this is a good development. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So one of Donald Trump's men is about to plead the Fifth. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. So after a 15-year-old boy walked into a Michigan high school and opened fire, killing 4 of his fellow students and injuring 7 others, prosecutors have criminally charged the boy's parents with manslaughter for recklessly enabling their son to do precisely what he did. Let's talk about why this is the right call by Michigan prosecutors. Because justice matters. So the month of November was really something on the legal front. And yes, friends, I know it feels like an eternity, but I am more convinced now more than ever that we are moving in the direction of accountability and, yes, justice. Here's a short recap of the legal stories for the month that was November 2021. So let's talk for a minute about all the president's lackeys and where the January 6th investigation goes from here. Because justice matters. So the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol attack just postponed the testimony of 2 witnesses, Mike Flynn and a guy named Nicholas Luna. Let's talk about what this might mean. Because justice matters. 2 steps up, 1 step back. Let's talk about the trial date that was just set in Steve Bannon's criminal case for contempt of Congress. Because justice matters. So former police officer Kim Potter is on trial for the killing of Daunte Wright. Let's take just a few minutes to talk about how somebody can actually be convicted of manslaughter even if the killing was not intentional. Because justice matters. So Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, just committed the crime of contempt of Congress. And frankly, that might not even be the worst part of Mark Meadows' day. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Donald Trump is being subpoenaed by New York State Attorney General Letitia James. And at that deposition, in accordance with the Fifth Amendment, Donald Trump will have the right to remain silent. But is there anybody who believes Donald Trump has the ability to remain silent? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So a federal appeals court in Washington, D.C. just issued an opinion slamming Donald Trump. And the court's ruling indisputably moves matters in the direction of justice. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So with the latest revelation that Mark Meadows had a PowerPoint presentation about how to corruptly overturn the results of the presidential election, apropos of the holiday season, I've got to say, it's beginning to look a lot like RICO. Okay, I'm no Bing Crosby, and sometimes, friends, we have to laugh, right? So feel free to laugh, if only at my terrible singing voice. But, more and more each day, the evidence is showing that Trump and company were acting like a RICO crew. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So let's talk about three quick topics. One, Mark Meadows' democracy-busting PowerPoint presentation. Two, the upcoming House Select Committee vote for Meadows for contempt of Congress. And three, why trying Mark Meadows' criminal case once he's indicted will be a prosecutorial walk in the park. Because justice matters. I want to take just a few minutes today to talk about hope, to talk about some good news, because a bill was just favorably voted out of the House Judiciary Committee called the Homicide Victims Families' Rights Act. So let's talk about some of what we heard from the House Select Committee when it was explaining to the American people why it is so important to hold Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, in contempt of Congress. Because justice matters. So Congress just referred Mark Meadows to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution, and now DOJ will have to decide what to do. But this one is a legal layup, an easy call. Let's talk about why that is. Because justice matters. So the House Select Committee released text messages sent on January 6th to Mark Meadows by Donald Trump's allies and family members, begging him to tell Donald Trump to stop what was going on at the U.S. Capitol. And that, friends, reinforces and reaffirms that Donald Trump was indeed responsible for what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So, political dirty trickster and convicted and pardoned federal felon Roger Stone appears before the House Select Committee today, and he tells us he's ready to plead the Fifth, invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. What might happen to old Roger after he pleads the Fifth? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Judge Tanya Chutkan just handed down the stiffest sentence yet for a defendant who attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And some of the comments she made at the sentencing hearing reminded me of two federal statutes that I believe we're going to start hearing more about in the near future: sedition and insurrection. Why do I say I think we're going to be hearing more about those two crimes in the near future? Well, because justice matters. So Donald Trump just put out a statement. And if you read between the lines and the lies, it sure looks like Donald Trump thinks he's about to go through some things. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. Well, there he goes again. Donald Trump filing yet another bogus lawsuit, weaponizing the courts for his own nefarious purposes. Let's talk about his latest frivolous filing and why it will fail. Because justice matters. So it sure seems like two of the three branches of government, the legislative and the judicial, are pretty darn sure Donald Trump committed crimes. You think the third branch of government is starting to get the message? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Congressman Scott Perry has evidence that is important to the investigation into the insurrection, and Perry just told the House Select Committee, "I'm not providing it." What now? Well, let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So we often hear the question asked, why hasn't Mike Flynn been restored to active duty and court-martialed? Well, I think I may have one possible answer to that question. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So let's do a quick holiday justice recap. Where are we on the justice front? And more importantly, where are we headed? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Donald Trump announced that he intends to hold a press conference on January 6th, the one-year anniversary of the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol. You know, the next 10 days between now and then would be a really good time for DOJ to step up and do a little bit of justice. Because justice matters. So as the Department of Justice continues to stand back and stand by, the House Select Committee is full speed ahead, moving toward accountability for Trump and company. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So let's talk about actual justice, the perception of justice, and how much longer the American people should be made to wait. Because justice matters. So let's talk about what the House Select Committee just said about its investigation on the timing front. And then let's talk about something I know I haven't worked on enough, and that's patience. Because knowing how long justice can take, patience also matters. So Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, was just convicted by a federal jury in New York. What should the prosecutors do now? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So Donald Trump is once again trying to use the courts, this time the Supreme Court, to cover up his crimes and delay his day of reckoning. Will the Supreme Court give him the assist? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. So 2021 was the year of the big lie. But with the House Select Committee preparing to open the new year with public hearings regarding the insurrection, 2022 will be the year of the big truth. And 2022 will also be the year of accountability. Because justice matters.